A US fighter jet shot down yet another unidentified object over Canada. This is the third such incident in a little over a week. The object was taken down in a joint operation by North American Aerospace Defense Command. The Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced the shooting down of this object over the Yukon Territory in the country's north. He said the Canadian forces would recover and analyze the wreckage. The object was shot down over Yukon, which borders Alaska, where fighter jets downed another object just yesterday. The Canadian Defence Minister Anita Anand said the object was cylindrical in shape and posed a risk to civilian air traffic before it was shot down.
The object was flying at an altitude of approximately 40,000 feet, had unlawfully entered Canadian airspace, and posed a reasonable threat to the safety of civilian flight. The object was downed approximately 100 miles from the Canada-United States border over Canadian territory in central Yukon.
Canada's defense minister refused to speculate about the origins of the object, but stated they would analyze it.
At this point, we are continuing to do the analysis on the objects, and we will make sure that analysis is thorough. And so it would not be prudent for me to speculate on the origins of the object at this time. However, I will say that we are continuing to work closely with our NORAD partners and our U.S. partners, and we will make sure that we leave no stone unturned in the analysis of the data that we are now going to be turning to analyze.
Pentagon spokesperson Brigadier General Pat Ryder said the U.S. President Joe Biden authorized U.S. fighter aircraft to work with Canada to take down this object. He said one of two F-22 fighter jets monitoring this object were monitoring this object before firing it down. Meanwhile, a temporary flight restriction airspace was placed in central Montana in the United States. This after the North American Aerospace Defense Command detected a radar anomaly and sent jets to investigate. No objects were found as per radar hits. The two incidents come just a week after the U.S. shot down an alleged Chinese spy balloon off the coast of South Carolina into the Atlantic Ocean, sparking a diplomatic row between the two countries. For more on this story, we're now joined by Mark Merawitz, a political commentator and a professor at the State University of New York Maritime College. Thanks so much for speaking to WION. Now, I know that the matter is still under investigation. We don't know enough about these objects that have been shot down in the last 2 days. But, you know, in a manner of speaking, 3 balloons have been shot down in a little over just a week. Many believe these to be spying vehicles. So the question then is, do you believe there is a new global security dimension emerging now?
I think the point is it's not new. I mean, the fact is we know that there were 3 balloons over the United States during the Trump administration. Either they didn't know about it or didn't tell anybody about it. We also know that this balloon program is worldwide, and it's been over Latin America, Costa Rica, Venezuela, and apparently our government is saying it's 40 countries and 5 continents. The Chinese balloon program is international. It's global. So there's nothing new about it. The fact is the world is waking up to it and trying to evaluate what it means. That is not a simple thing to do because we're trying to discern what the Chinese are trying to accomplish. But one thing is interesting is that on the balloon, the first balloon that was discovered shot down that you spoke about, the payload, the material that's on that balloon, my understanding is it's as big as 3 school buses. It's gigantic. So this is a very, very serious threat, I think, to national security and world security. No question about it.
I mean, just that description you gave us of the size of the balloon, it is truly gigantic, and you believe it is a major security threat in our times. But, you know, are there signs that a balloon that was once, of course, considered innocent enough is now fast turning into a war weapon? I know you just mentioned that this is actually nothing new. The world seems to be waking up to it only now. Do you believe this has really been a weapon of surveillance at the very least, if not war, employed by China for a long time now?
Look, you know, China employs facial recognition and surveillance in its own country, and now it's employing surveillance around the world. Why use balloons? Well, there are many theories about it. One theory is that it's much cheaper than satellites. It apparently can float around in the atmosphere and doesn't get discovered very easily, quite remarkably. And it also can be seen, say, security analysts, as a backup if a satellite is knocked out and is no longer functional. Now, it's interesting that I read that the United States has used balloons, for example, for surveillance of narcotics trafficking and to prevent issues of security, homeland security issues. So there's nothing new about it. The fact is, though, the way the Chinese are using this, if we can, again, understand really what the purpose is, because we, again, I'm assuming our government and the governments around the world have a better idea. But as far as the people are concerned, it becomes, to be very candid, an object of, I don't know, hilarity. I had a student in the college who told me that her mother was, I think, somewhere in a state in the United States and took pictures of the balloon being shot down. So at the same time, while China is using this obviously as a, call it a weapon or as a method of surveillance, people are reacting to it with not a great level of seriousness. And it seems to be very serious, but I think we have to figure out what it's all about first.
It's very interesting you say that, Professor, because fact of the matter is that ever since the first Chinese spy balloon was shot down by the US, you know, it's something that's become a matter of jokes and memes on the social media. But that apart, if you believe that, well, these balloons have been around for a very long time, China is increasingly subjecting nation after nation to this kind of surveillance, and it is a serious security threat, then why do you believe it is the case that just a handful of nations have actually reacted or raised their voice over this issue? So far, we've heard from the United States, Canada, and Taiwan. That's it. Why this silence from the rest of the world, you think?
Well, I mean, look, why is China doing it? I mean, they're doing it to test the ability of the United States and Canada and NORAD and missile defense to be able to respond to these types of things. They're kind of poking into our security system. But the truth of the matter is, you know, I mean, with all deference to the Costa Ricans, Venezuelans, and the others, I mean, the fact that the balloon is hovering over missile sites in Montana is of grave global significance as compared to the other surveillance. I mean, what are they surveilling in Colombia? I mean, maybe they're just throwing a lot of balloons out there so people will not understand the severity of it. It's absolutely mysterious, but at the same time, gravely important to understand why the Chinese would employ this device, and more importantly, why the United States was fast asleep at the switch when this happened, not knowing about it and not being able to take immediate action. This balloon was floating across the United States, the continental United States, and didn't get shot down, if I remember correctly, for a couple of days until President Biden gave the order. Because, you know, they were worried, said the president and the Defense Department, that there would be pieces of wreckage that would be hurting people. And in fact, as I said, it just became like, you know, something you go out for a picnic and watch the government shoot down the balloons. I mean, you know, it becomes the balance between complete foolishness and grave severity. So the government is waiting to do something about it. Why should the people get upset about it? That's exactly the point. So, I mean, again, we need to understand it, and the truth of the matter is we probably won't, because whatever it is completely classified. So we're not going to know what it's about, but we need to stop it. And the Chinese need to understand that their mischief and malevolence, whether to their own people or around the world, really has to stop. And to your point about the rest of the world raising concerns, it's the United States and its allies that are the ones that are going to push back against this. And we need a worldwide feeling of revulsion against this honestly outrageous behavior, yet another example of outrageous behavior by the Chinese.
Very strong words there. Outrageous behavior by the Chinese and the entire world, you believe, Professor, needs to express a sense of revulsion. You know, the funny thing about domestic politics in the US is that a lot of people criticize President Biden for having this balloon shot down, and then there were those who criticized him for not doing it fast enough. Well, that's politics for you. But why has the world been caught napping? Especially the United States of America, I think, is the most pertinent question you have raised. On that note, Professor Mark Merowitz, thank you so much for sharing your perspective with WION.
Thank you.